Viktor Hovland recently opened up about his decision not to join LIV, saying that if he had made the jump over to LIV, it's a decision that he probably would have regretted. Now, obviously, there's a lot more nuance to it than that, so we've got a bunch of Viktor Hovland quotes from that recent interview that we're going to dig into in just a second. But more importantly, what we're going to look at is whether this sheds some light on the nuances that come to the individual decisions guys make, whether they do or don't make the jump over to LIV. And with the season's final major, the Open Championship, upon us, we've got a lot of other things we need to dig into as well, including Tiger Woods and some prominent golfers calling for him to retire, including one asking the question, what the hell is he doing? So we're going to talk about that, as well as Rory McIlroy. He had, of course, that disastrous meltdown at the end of the US Open. And a lot of us are wondering, where is his head at after his brief hiatus from the game? Is he ready to play? Because Rory, as we all know, if there's ever a home game when it comes to a major, it's going to be the Open Championship. So there's going to be a lot of eyeballs on him. Before we dive into all that, of course, we want to thank this week's sponsor, Titleist. And guys, as you know, Titleist Pro V1 and Pro V1X is the #1 ball at this week's Open Championship, with more players teeing it up, teeing Titleist up this week for golf's final major. And there's a good reason for that. The Titleist Pro V1, Pro V1X, and Pro V1X Left Dash are the most technologically advanced in the game and the ultimate golf ball performance choice. They deliver exceptionally long distance, consistent flight, and control. So speaking from our own experience getting fit for them, there are some subtle nuances to them. They all perform exceptionally well. Getting fit for the right one for you is so important. So make sure you go to Titleist.com, find a fitter near you, go out there, experiment, try them. You have different flight trajectories, spin, and things like that. Even though they all perform exceptionally well off the tee, when it gets to around the greens, you want to make sure you find the one that fits you well. And that's what we've had the opportunity to do recently. You're going to want to do it too. So go to Titleist.com to check that out. Now, Mike, we got to talk about this. So Viktor Hovland, right? We know that without a doubt, he was one of the, if not arguably like the most speculated guy going to LIV for quite a while.
Sure, yeah.
And Hovland was on top of the world, really working his way up the official world golf rankings. Currently sits at number 7. But he has since dispelled any type of rumors that he's going to go to LIV. I think now it's kind of this post-mortem of just like going through and understanding his decision. And it's not just for Hovland. I think the reason we want to do this is to better understand, if we're going to live in this world of separate leagues,
right?
Why do some guys go and why do some guys stay? You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah. Money. Well,
money's the big one.
Right.
But not for everybody,
right?
As proven by Viktor Hovland. So I'll read you some of these quotes. And the one important thing to know is that there are certain guys that wouldn't even entertain the idea, shut it down immediately. Hovland was not one of them. And I think that's what really led to a lot of the speculation. Hovland did take the meetings. And according to this, he had good reason for doing so. What he said is, if I'm going to say no to something, I want to at least know what it is. So respect there.
Makes sense.
Take the meeting. Don't just immediately rule it out. And I do think that hindsight's 2020. I think some guys may have regretted now when it was a very contentious thing when it had first happened. And this is a large part to that, the fumbling of the ball with the PGA Tour and the way that they handled it. There were some guys who were all in on PGA Tour. And I think that they turned down even hearing LIV out because they didn't want to be in that camp. And now might be thinking like, I should have at least heard the opportunity.
Oh, I'm sure there's a lot of guys who regret, not entertaining it, not taking it. But I'm sure way more guys than Viktor Hovland took those meetings. I'm sure mostly all the guys took the meetings just to hear it out, because it's funny. I think about the old Michael Scott Paper Company, who's coming with me, took a risk, went, and then all of a sudden they got their jobs back. I think now people are saying like, all right, maybe I should have done that. I'm curious who has the biggest regret about it. I'm sure more and more of those stories are going to come out, like Viktor Hovland, as they're asked about it. But yeah, man, no doubt you take that with money being thrown at you. I think Viktor was one of the guys who, I'm not sure if I'm right about this, but if LIV started up and the offer was given to him all around that 2021 time before he won the FedEx Cup, and once he won that, money was no object at that point, or he didn't need it anymore. He even said it in a recent press conference, like, what are you going to buy with your FedEx Cup? I remember saying, like, I don't need anything.
Right.
So he's that type of guy.
He definitely is.
Yeah.
Yeah. And he's also not been one to just be an all-in PGA Tour guy. He's had his criticism. And in the same interview, he kind of like dived into that a little bit. He said, at the end of the day, the question is, he said, I have no hard feelings against the guys that went. I completely understand because there's a lot of gray areas at the moment. But for me, I did not think their product was appealing enough to go. Obviously, they're throwing out a lot of money, but I've already made a lot of money. I'm not a very materialistic person. It's nice to make life easier for yourself, but that's not what gets me up in the morning. So he touched on, I started reading the next quote. We have even more to get into, which is where I got into there, but he touched on what you said. And this is where it's a very individual decision. Money is not, I don't say it's not an object for him, but I think there's levels to it. Once you're a guy like him and you've made yourself $50 million, all in between PGA Tour winnings and sponsorship deals. There's certain guys where that's enough.
Yeah.
He's comfortable. They don't need $300 million worth of generational wealth in order to be happy.
Right.
But what I thought was interesting, and this is going to kind of unveil itself more as we go through these quotes, him saying that I didn't think their product was appealing enough to go. So when he says product, you wonder exactly what does he mean there. Money would be part of the product. But in the second line saying, they're throwing out a lot of money, it's like he's saying that it wasn't that the number that they threw at me wasn't appealing enough. It was something about the league itself. Now, what that is could be a lot of things. It could be who he's playing against week in and week out. It could be the schedule.
Just
it
the
could
fact
be the
that
venues.
If it will flop or not.
Right.
That was probably the biggest thing on their minds. Like, this startup is never going to make it. And then a year into it, this startup, nobody's watching it. So even the guys on the table a year later still like, LIV is still no good. Now, what are we in the third season? I think we're just now tasting a little bit of LIV's success a little bit. I mean, I think Spain was the last weekend that just ended. Sergio won. Crowd looked decent. It looked like a good event.
Right.
I feel like it is gaining a little momentum. It's going to take maybe a couple more years.
Yeah.
But I could see how that being one of the hardest decisions those guys made to leave the PGA Tour, jump ship on something that was so fresh.
And then we're talking a while ago when it was so fresh, but I'm even thinking of it established right now because there's no denying that Hovland still has the opportunity to go if he wanted it.
I'm sure.
He's not talking about
he's one of those guys
2020. He's talking about very, very recently when he was in the headlines. And we're talking about current state of LIV. There's still an element to the product itself that's not appealing to him. And if it's not appealing to him, there must be other guys who feel the same. So what I mean is, as we kind of build this case of being like, why do some guys make the decision to go while others don't? You got to think, what is it about the product that's a turnoff to certain guys? So he kind of expanded on that. And what Hovland went on to say is, at the end of the day, the question is, what's going to make me a better player? And hey, in 20 years, if I'm on the back end of my career, playing LIV Golf wouldn't be too bad. It might be a pretty cool opportunity, but right now, it's something that I think I would probably look back on and regret.
Yeah.
So that's the part of the product. There's some aspect of it that, and I'm not saying that every golfer feels the same way. That's evident by the guys who did make the jump. But there's, and this is, I think, is almost a publicity issue that LIV will need to overcome in order to attract the younger, better names, is this idea that LIV is where you go when you're towards the tail end of your career.
Yeah.
And he kind of said that in so many words. He's saying, like, basically the defining factor for him is where he's at in his career in his youth.
Yep. That's what it sounds like.
Because he's saying, like, if 20 years from now, I would make the jump.
Right.
There's something that in some of these guys' minds remains to be accomplished on the PGA Tour that cannot be accomplished on LIV. And you guys weigh in the comments. What do you think that is? What do you think he's referring to? Is it certain events? Is it the FedEx Cup? Is it, there's a lot of different things. You know what I'm saying? Not in Hovland's case, but for some guys, it might be the President's Cup. We have the President's Cup around the corner, and the President's Cup is part of the PGA Tour, unlike the Ryder Cup.
Yep.
So there's going to be certain guys that want to play in that, like that. So what are those things? Is the question.
It's interesting because there's a lot of guys on tour. There's that that elite caliber JT Scheffler, Xander, Morikawa, those guys who've won, proven winners, those guys are in the field mindset right now that honestly, all they want are majors, right? I got to imagine they only play in non-signature events when they're contracted to or to stay sharp, right? Then maybe they're leading into a major that week, so they'll play in the John Deere or something like that. Then you've got a handful or the other set of guys that are trying to make it on tour. No-namers, haven't won anything yet, right? So for a guy like Hovland, who's won so much on tour, he's 50 mil, whatever money he has, majors is probably the only thing he wants. I think leaving that, and he doesn't have any, I don't believe, right? Hovland's a major-less guy, I believe.
Right.
He jumps to go there. That might be the one thing. Like, he'll never have a shot because world rankings will just drop off for him.
Right.
You know, he may have exemptions into some majors coming up, but he's not there like a Bryson or someone.
No,
So,
it's
you know,
true because
what else is he playing for
right
now?
now, Hovland's only pathway to the majors, more or less, is his where he finishes in majors.
Yep.
And his official World Golf Rankings points at
Which
the
is strong.
moment. Yes, which is strong now, but right at the moment, and this is where you see a lot of guys on LIV struggle with. If he was to move over to LIV, he would still be in majors for some time, but he'd have to perform exceptionally well. A lot of pressure becomes on those
Or he would
4
drop off
tournaments
fast. Yep.
where he starts to drop off fast. But I still, I don't know why, you know, and I'm speculating. I can't get inside of Hovland's mind, but I feel like there's something even more than the majors to him. I think there's something with the PGA Tour, and I think there's certain things that legacy wise, you know, I think guys who are looking for Hall of Fame careers. Now, again, if I'm wrong, I'm wrong. And you guys tell me in the comments, but I just feel like when you're looking at Hall of Fame inductions right now, and this may change in 10 years, but right now I feel like a lot of the criteria in the eyeballs are your performance on the PGA Tour, just because that's what it's been for so long.
Right.
Of course, you could kill it in majors, you know, win 4 or 5 majors and make it into the Hall of Fame either way, you know, write your own ticket. But if it's just career wise, if you played out right now, as it stands, I feel like if you played out a career on LIV versus a career on the PGA Tour, you have a better chance winning on PGA Tour events to get into something like that. So
I agree.
There's the little intangibles there that are more than that.
Yeah, no, I agree with
You
that.
know what I'm saying? So that being said, let's take an idea of this picture of there are other guys, obviously, who could potentially make the jump, and everybody's going to be different. And I'm kind of like distilling it down. What are the main factors at this point, right? So of course, the dollar signs, how many zeros are there is going to be for certain guys. I think there are going to be certain guys like Hovland that it's not going to matter if you threw $300 million at him. To him, it seems from hearing what he says, $50 million or $300 million in his bank account doesn't matter to him.
Right.
It's still a lot of money. He's rich. He's fine. He's good to go. There's going to be other guys that generational wealth is going to be important to them. I would say one of those guys I put in that category is Rahm.
Yeah.
Because at the end of the day, Jon Rahm had made as much, if not more money than Viktor Hovland. He's a guy who is perfectly fine and well off, but that is a different echelon of wealth of what he got from making that jump over. This is the next 6 generations underneath him, you know, in his family are going to be fine and taken care of with that much money. That's that generational wealth.
Plus he has kids. It's funny. Hovland has no kids. He's not thinking generational.
Right.
He's a single. I don't even know if he's single, but just a regular dude. No kids, not a parent.
Yeah. And you don't know at some point, you know, you and I were both family guys. Family becomes part of the decision.
No doubt.
You're Hovland. You're on your own, making your own decisions. You're a single dude. You know, you've got a wife and kids. Now you're starting to wonder, like, what's good for them?
Set them up.
What's best? So this is what I'm saying about the nuance to this decision. So money's a big one. The other one is, where are you at in your career? And Hovland indicated that if it was 20 years from now, right? I look to a guy like Sergio Garcia as was the perfect LIV candidate.
Yeah.
Here's a guy who can definitely still play. Do not get me wrong, right? But he's getting up there in age. I think other than having a streak or a breakout season, we were starting to see on the PGA Tour where he was starting to move out of the regular Sunday broadcast, so to speak, right? But he's a guy who proves he can still win, and he can win on LIV. I'm not going to, it's hard to make the argument whether it's easier to win on LIV. There's a lot of great
It's a
talent
tough
over there.
argument, right?
I think when LIV first started, you could say that there was so many no names in the field. They could say it was easier to win over there. I think kind of those days are kind of gone. So I can't take anything away from his win. He won in Spain.
Awesome.
Fantastic
Awesome
for him. Like,
Awesome for
I think as an international component, whether you go or not, but there's no denying that I think if you've already accomplished what you wanted to accomplish, whatever your own personal goals were on the PGA Tour, once you've checked those boxes, it does make it easier to make the jump. And Hovland seems to indicate he hasn't checked those boxes yet.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. But you think that more guys, big names, are going to be even still considering LIV at all, or you think it's completely done? The Schefflers, JTs, the Xanders, those guys, like, it's gone. I'm never thinking about it again.
It's hard to say that it's gone. I mean, even look at like a guy like JT, he's struggling on the PGA Tour.
Yeah.
They might, maybe it's $100 million is more enticing to him. It's hard to say. I think the defining factor is going to be two things. One, the merger
and how that affects
and the official World Golf Rankings.
Yep.
I think if you could accrue official World Golf Rankings playing on LIV, there's going to be some guys who are going to then make that jump. I think that's the next big predictor of whether they go.
Yeah.
But the other things I was looking at, factors to weigh in. And again, if you were building out like a checklist of whether a guy would go or not, I would kind of rank each one of these things. The second one, and this kind of relates to where you are in your career, but I think it's injury and ability at the moment. And I think the person that indicated that to me, the words came right out of his mouth, is Brooks Koepka.
Yeah.
Who said it in the Netflix Full Swing documentary. He said, effectively a big part of why he made that decision is he didn't know whether he'd continue to be competitive. And at that point, it's both a money and a whatever decision.
Right.
Think about it. You put yourself in his shoes, you're injured. You don't know how much longer you can play well or if you'll ever fully recover. And here's guaranteed money.
Exactly. I may never play again, and there's a check in my hand. It was probably a very easy decision for him.
Right.
No doubt.
Right.
Yeah.
So there's that. And then there's the other one is there are certain guys that I think there are some intangibles of their own personality and how that fits, whether they're guys who, like to be on something new. I the one I look at to that is Bryson DeChambeau.
Yeah.
I think it would be very hard pressed for anyone now to look back and say Bryson made the wrong decision going to LIV. He's a guy who likes to share his life through his YouTube channel. He's got more opportunities to do that by going over to LIV. He's a guy who he likes to be on kind of the cutting edge of different things.
Sure.
Experimentation, whatever you want to call it. And I think he gets that a little bit with LIV. So there's that little bit of an intangible. But if nothing else, what all of this proves is that their money is definitively not the only deciding factor, as evidenced by Viktor Hovland. And I think that Viktor raises a lot of interesting things for people who are recruiting for LIV to look at and see what can we do. But I think the number one thing out of this is that I think LIV has to shake off or find a way to change the narrative or the PR around this idea that it's the place to go when you're Brooks Koepka injured,
or retiring,
getting older, Sergio Garcia getting older. That's where you go. The last thing they want to be is the retirement league.
Right.
So I think that that's important. Speaking of retirement leagues, let's talk about Tiger.
Yeah. Yep.
First, just your take. Let's say Tiger plays an event but doesn't make the cut, right? You get 2 days of Tiger. Would you rather a mediocre to struggling Tiger or no Tiger?
I think I'd rather a no Tiger, because it gets upsetting. You got this incredible golfer you've watched for 20 years just break down in front of you.
It's the old burnout or fade away. It's the rock star. What is it?
Exactly.
You know what I'm saying? And there's going to be some people that love the fact that he's in the field. One area where I could think that is it's almost like a victory lap, right? I have young kids. To me, Tiger being in a field might be an incentive for me to go and bring them so they could say they saw Tiger play.
Yep.
I would think that when I was younger, someone brought me to go see Jack play.
Yep.
Even if Jack missed the cut, I saw him play. But that's a very selfish reason.
Right.
That's us as fans. So kind of this quote that came out, and this is someone who has expressed this before. He said it last year, and he's doubling down on it again this year. So Colin Montgomery, he said, kind of like expressing like what you were saying there. He said, "I hope people remember Tiger as Tiger was, the passion and the charismatic aura around him. That there is none of that now. At Pinehurst, he did not seem to enjoy a single shot, and you think, what the hell is he doing? He's coming to Troon, and he won't enjoy that either."
Yeah.
So,
It's not going to be any easier.
Right. And you think like Tiger himself too is really not giving us any clear indication. At the end of that Pinehurst US Open, he was asked like, would this be his final US Open? And he said, it may or may not be. So what it's revealing is definitely an inner struggle going on with Tiger, because what do we all know Tiger as a competitor? Right. And I think it burns him to not be in competition.
Yeah, no, it burns him. I think that guy's going to play as long as he humanly possible. As long as he could pick up a club and swing it, I think he's going to play it. I don't ever see him going into broadcast. I definitely don't ever see him playing Champions Tour for some reason. You know what I mean? But it's just tough to see him struggle. But I think if he just comes in, if he plays some of these signature events that they're going to grant him access to, I don't know when he's going to do it. I think we're done with signature events for the year until the playoffs.
Well, yeah, and that exemption comes in for next year, which we'll mention. But yeah,
let's see. But in those events, I think we need to see Tiger not only making the cut, but if we start getting some top 15s from him, and he's lingering around, and you're able to watch a little bit of him on the weekends,
yeah. Only area where I disagree is I do think we see a PGA Tour Champions version of Tiger. I do see him go over and play in that league eventually when he becomes eligible with his age. And
which
the reason I say
next year,
the reason I say that is a couple things. One, it is less grueling, right?
Sure.
It's meant to be. It's for the older guys. But I think we've also seen a dramatic shift in Tiger. I think we've been seeing a much softer version of Tiger, who seems more apt to want to maybe share his experience, maybe just go out there and maybe just enjoy the game a little bit more instead of being the hard-edged, really as even Montgomery was saying, like that really competitive area of Tiger. And this is where Tiger could still go and he could still win some events, still get that feeling of winning, but also have it being a little bit more of it's a little bit more relaxed.
Yeah.
I mean, we've even had guys from the PGA Tour champions here on the podcast, and they talk about how much fun they have even between events where they're going out, they're traveling the world and they're just playing just fun matches.
That's it. Yeah.
I could see Tiger being a part of that someday. But following up on what Colin Montgomery said, the last thing he said, "There's a time for all sportsmen to say goodbye, but it's very difficult to tell Tiger it's time to go. Obviously, he feels he can win. We are more realistic." So, and that's just it. I think a lot of us are looking at the TV and we're just being like, Tiger, he doesn't have it anymore. He can't win. But there's got to be some component of Tiger that feels that he could win, because I don't think a Tiger who truly believed he couldn't win would be out there.
Well, I agree with that. And I also feel like I think there's no way in the game of golf that you can ever go out on top. If everyone's like, Tiger should have retired after the 2019 Masters when he threw his arms up with that iconic thing and then just quit. It's like, no, that's when you're amped to keep going.
Yes, no doubt.
Like, you're never going to stop.
No doubt. And we saw that with all the greats, Arnie, I think you have to fizzle away. I think it gets to a certain point. It does become a little ceremonial. You announce it's your final, and you make that last walk to the crowds cheering your name, and that's kind of it. But the funny thing with it is that Tiger has a lot of pressure on him, and golf is doing everything it can to keep him in the game. You kind of teased this earlier, but think about this for a second. The US Open, Tiger's exemption to the US Open as per the normal rules it's been expired. We were at the US Open Media Day and we heard them kind of make this announcement that they had given a special exemption for Tiger to play, because they said for all Tiger's done for the game, it wouldn't feel like a US Open without him. So we extended the invite to him.
Yeah.
Right. But it's also smart. It's more eyeballs. It sells more tickets, right? Going forward, the signature events starting next year as part of the PGA Tour schedule, they announced that he has a lifetime exemption into all future signature events. It's the way golf is just saying, please don't leave.
Yeah, right.
Tiger, stay, and just even if you help us with our Thursday and Friday ratings, like stick around.
Exactly.
But to a certain extent, respecting the man, like it's like if he feels, it's got to be his decision. If he feels that he can't do anymore, I think just puppeting him around is not the look that he wants, or that us as true fans want to see
I
either.
agree with that. Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So of course there's a lot to it, and you guys let us know in the comments what you think, but we also got to talk about Rory. So here's a guy who's obviously not ready to retire. Here's a guy who can still do a lot of damage, but struggled. And we really wondered what it did to his mental state, that big collapse at the end of the US Open. So we're going to talk about what he said this week, where we think his mindset is at, right after a quick word from our sponsors.
All right, guys, so FootJoy is the #1 shoe in golf because they offer the widest selection of sizes, styles, and performance options of any golf shoe out there. Whether it's the spikeless performance of the Pro SLX or the Pro SLX Carbon, or even the Premier Series, which is the shoe that's worn by pretty much all tour players out there you see nowadays, because it is the most classiest, to me, classiest looking shoe, the most comfortable shoe, and all the different styles that it comes in. Like, there's so many choices, and you have to feel it for yourself. You have to either go to a store, try them on, or just comb through the website and look at all the options. And you can even design your own
you can personalize them,
which I love. We've done it so many times, all the different things, and they're constantly adding to the catalog of stuff you could put on the shoes. So it's ever changing. You got to check it out. Go give it a try. Just trust the brand that's been #1 forever. Trust your game to FootJoy, the #1 shoe in golf.
All right, so the question becomes, is Rory ready for the season's final major? And when they, obviously, I think he gets the most pressure on.
Sure.
Being played in the UK, it's more of a home game for him. And we saw that, in multiple Open Championships now, the crowd's following, the crowd's rooting him on. But there's no denying that he took that US Open loss hard. And he's been met with a lot of criticism for it too, the way he handled it.
Sure,
and to me, it's almost hard. I want to see that class come through. But at the same time, it's hard just knowing these guys are human with human emotions, and just knowing how much that must have weighed on him, the way he lost that US Open. But where his criticism came on was that he just, right after leaving the 18th green, he was in the parking lot, he was gone. And on top of that, he then pulled out of a signature event and took that 3-week hiatus. And some had said, hey, look at what Bryson had done in the PGA championship, where he stuck around, even though he lost, he stuck around to congratulate Schauffele. And people were saying that should have been reciprocated a little bit with Rory potentially sticking around and congratulating Bryson. So there was a bit of a bad look to it, but I think if nothing else, that just showed where his mental state truly was at that moment.
Yeah, it's been interesting to see Rory over the past few years go from hero, I hate to call it zero because he still has a lot of fans, but from Bryson really be going from zero, because a lot of people hated him.
Yeah, boy, did their stock switch in a lot of ways.
Big time.
Yeah.
Right? And it just goes to show you how in this game that can happen. And I don't know if Bryson's just been laying it on so thick of being the good guy lately. Some are saying it's over the top how different he is. Good for him, right? He's probably been working with someone, mental coaches. He's changed as a guy, but to see Rory flip like that.
Right. Well, I think on the Bryson side, I think it's not only that, I think it's just maturing. He was a young guy when he came out and rubbed a lot of people the wrong way with the way he went about things. He's a guy who's coming into his own. He's maturing. Rory, I think there's a lot of indications of just how deep his struggle really is. Going back to the loss where he ripped his shirt, that's showing that fire and his desire to win. And, each time with the majors, each time he doesn't win a major, it just becomes, the conversation becomes bigger and bigger about how long it's been. It becomes more pressure. But another indication is just what's going on in his personal life, announcing his divorce the week of one major and then announcing they're getting back together and rectifying it the next major. So there's a lot of personal stuff that's going on with him as well.
Fist fighting LaCava at the Ryder Cup.
Right.
Like, the dude has some anger issues.
There's no denying that there's something in Rory that's not quite sitting right. And golf being such a mental game and such a game of momentum, it's obvious for us to call into question whether we think he'll perform well this week, full well knowing like how what just happened at the US Open and the 3 weeks he had to take off.
Yeah. One
thing I'll say is that he did play pretty well this week. His first event back, tied for 4th at the Scottish Open.
Yeah, it was very promising.
And we'll talk about where we think he'll finish in a second, but I will say that DraftKings for fantasy has him only behind Scheffler and DeChambeau. So there's no
Number
denying
three.
number
Okay.
3. There's no denying that he's in the conversation. But Rory, now being back in golf means he's also in front of the press. He's getting asked the questions. He's finally speaking out. So what he had said was, the few days after it were pretty tough at times, talking about the U.S. Open.
Mm-hmm.
But I feel like I've done a good job of thinking about it rationally and constructively and taking what I need from it and trying to learn from it. But like for the most part, it was a great day. I keep saying to people, it was a great day until it wasn't. So he's like, you could see he's now trying to speak more rationally about it. He's saying it was, I think he's trying as hard as he can to focus on the good aspect,
Yeah.
which is, in reality, Rory really had 3 good days. You can even say 3.5 good days,
Right.
and a half of a bad day. And we're golfers,
Yep.
so we can relate to this. We could play around. We could play, 16 good holes.
Sure.
What are we thinking about when we get home? The 2 bad ones,
Right.
and what could have been.
Mm-hmm.
So I totally get that. But since then, he's had time to settle down. He had to change his mindset. So speaking of that change of mindset, he said, there's not a day that goes by that I don't feel like I'm the luckiest person in the world to get up every morning and be healthy and follow my dream. There's videos of me at 7 years old saying, I want to be the best player in the world and I want to win all the majors. To be able to try to make that little 7-year-old boy proud every day is something that I really don't take for granted. I'm very appreciative of the position that I'm in my life. So that's very level-headed.
Yep.
It makes you wonder, maybe he is working with someone from a mental health standpoint,
Sure.
which if he is, I tip my cap to him. But it's just like, okay, I think there are countless golfers, professional golfers, who would in a second trade careers with Rory.
Yeah, countless. Yeah.
And I think that's what he's starting to realize. And I think he's starting to settle into this idea of like, maybe I should look at what I've done instead of what I haven't done yet.
Smart.
You know what I'm saying? And it makes me wonder if is this just him speaking to the press and just trying to be positive, or is this a true shift in mindset? Because I think with Rory, there's no denying that all aspects of his game are there. He's a guy physically
Always in contention,
who can absolutely compete and play the game. There's no real holes in his game.
Yes.
He drives the ball arguably better than anybody. His short game, he's got all the tools, right? And it makes me wonder, again, sign of maturity. If Rory can get to a point where he can kind of stabilize, he's being a family man, being all that stuff, he stabilizes and he able to really embrace that mindset of just being like, just look at what I've accomplished and just being happy to be there. I wonder if it's a nuance, but that little bit of pressure taken off of him just a bit is what's needed to get over the hump where he's in contention in all these majors and doesn't quite finish.
Yeah, could be.
Because I wonder if right now the mindset is more, I have to do this, instead of the mindset of being like, I've done a lot and I'm just going to put my best self out there. And if it happens, it happens.
Yeah.
I'm not a sports psychologist, but you know what I mean?
But you sound like a damn good one. I want to hire you before my round, man. No, but that's a good point. He took a 3-week hiatus before hitting the Scottish this week. Did well, T4, right. Very promising. I think if there's a guy to bet money on this week, without a doubt, I'm going to go Rory. Because of some of the stuff you said, plus I think it's more of a home game kind of.
Yeah.
It's a style of golf he's grown up on. Everyone talks about that with some of these European guys. Obviously, there's a lot of great guys like that in the field who have won in the past, like Shane Lowry, things like that. But I think this could be Rory's week. I don't know if Bryson has what it takes to go back-to-back with majors.
Yeah.
Plus, I've been kind of following him on LIV since his U.S. Open, and it hasn't been anything too gangbusters. So maybe he's kind of fell off a little bit, but... So all that, maybe that little break and everything is what he needed, Rory. Maybe this is it. I think this might be it.
If he's going to win, though, he's got to go through Mr. Slow and Steady, Scotty Scheffler.
Yeah.
Just if he does what he's doing and puts on a ball striking clinic, and if he putts, forget it. You know what I mean? It's his to win. But I think Rory, it's good to see this. And I think when we say that hiatus, what was important for Rory is it's not just stepping away from the tee box. it's when you step away for those 3 weeks, you're also stepping away from the press conference.
Mm-hmm.
And I think Rory is a guy, because of his nature of wanting to share his opinion, he's been sucked in more times than I think he should have been into his opinion and being the voice of things and stuff like that. And that, I think, weighs on people over time.
Yeah.
You think about guys and they'll go the other direction, like a Koepka, who's very quiet, doesn't offer much in his press conferences, and just kind of like focuses all on, in between the ropes, so to speak.
Right.
Rory's a guy who I think just the refreshment on his mind of just possibly just being away from that side of the game might also help quite a bit.
Totally could.
But he's going to be fully back, thrown to the wolves this week.
Mm-hmm.
Press conferences, starting up today, and it's just going to run through the week. He's going to be in front of those cameras. So it's going to be a very interesting thing to see how much he's able to manage that.
Yeah.
But I don't think anything of what happened in Pinehurst is reason not to give him a look. If you're, putting a fantasy team together or whatever it may be, he's got to be in the conversation. And for his sake, I hope that he does turn it around. And I hope that even if he doesn't win, he has a strong showing, and that will boost his confidence to continue to see some great things from Rory going forward. So that's everything we have for you guys this week. Enjoy the Open Championship. We'll be here to report on any news that pops up between now and then. Make sure you subscribe wherever you get your podcast. We'll see you in the next one.